My name is Daniel. I'm 59 years old and I thought I knew everything there was to know about trust, love and marriage. After 32 years with the same woman, I believed we had built something unbreakable. I was wrong, dead wrong, and the way I found out still makes my blood run cold. It was a Tuesday morning in March when my world collapsed. The kind of Tuesday that starts like any other. Coffee brewing, morning news droning in the background, the familiar sound of Margaret moving around upstairs, getting ready for her job at the insurance company. We lived in our modest two-story home in Akron, Ohio, the same house where we'd raised our two kids, Emily and Jake. Both grown now, both living their own lives in different states. I remember the exact moment everything changed. I was sitting at my laptop in our home office, paying some bills online like I did every month. I clicked on our joint checking account, the one we'd shared for 3 decades. The screen loaded, and I stared at the number in disbelief. Balance? $12.37. My heart started pounding. There had to be a mistake. Just yesterday, we had over $43,000 in that account. I refreshed the page, thinking it was some kind of technical glitch. Same number. $12.37. With shaking fingers, I clicked through to our savings account, the one where we kept our emergency fund, our vacation money, the account that was supposed to help us through retirement. Zero. Completely empty. I felt like I was drowning. The room started spinning as I checked account after account. Our money market account, gone. The CD we'd just renewed last month, liquidated and emptied. Even the small account we kept for household expenses, wiped clean. In total, Margaret had stolen over $215,000, money we'd saved together penny by penny over decades of marriage, money from my construction business, from her job, from birthday gifts, tax refunds and careful budgeting. Gone. I sat there in that office, surrounded by family photos and the life we'd built together, and I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my heart in a vice. This wasn't just theft. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. The worst part, I still had no idea what was coming next. I heard Margaret's footsteps on the stairs, her usual hurried pace as she got ready to leave for work. She appeared in the doorway of the office, looking perfectly normal. Same blonde hair she'd been dyeing for the past 10 years to hide the grey. Same professional outfit she wore to the insurance office. Same smile she'd given me every morning for 32 years. "Morning, honey," she said, adjusting her earrings. "I'm running a bit late today. Mrs. Henderson wants to discuss her policy changes first thing." I turned in my chair to face her, the laptop screen still showing our devastated accounts behind me. "Margaret," I said, and my voice came out hoarse, "we need to talk." Something flickered in her eyes. Just for a second, but I caught it. "What about? I really am running late, Daniel." "About our bank accounts." I watched her face carefully. "About the $215,000 that disappeared overnight." The mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw something in my wife's face that I'd never seen before. Cold calculation, like she was deciding what lie to tell me. Then she composed herself. "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous." "Margaret, I'm looking at the accounts right now. Everything's gone." She walked over to the laptop, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She glanced at the screen, and I watched her expression. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't confused. She was thinking. "There must be some mistake," she said finally. "Maybe the bank had some kind of system error. I'll call them on my lunch break." "Margaret?" I stood up, facing her. "Tell me the truth. Where is our money?" She looked me straight in the eye and lied. "Daniel, I have no idea what happened to the money, but I'm sure there's an explanation. Banks don't just lose people's money." In that moment, looking at the woman I'd shared more than half my life with, I realized I was staring at a stranger. The Margaret I thought I knew would never lie to me like this. The Margaret I married would be as panicked as I was about our life savings disappearing. This woman standing in front of me was someone else entirely. "I'm calling the bank right now," I said. "Good," she replied, checking her watch. "I really do have to go. We'll figure this out tonight." She kissed my cheek like she had thousands of times before and walked out. I heard her car start in the driveway and pull away. I stood there in the silence of our empty house, holding the phone, and for the first time in our marriage, I was afraid of my own wife. The call to the bank confirmed my worst fears. The transactions were legitimate. Authorized transfers initiated online using our joint account credentials. The customer service representative, a patient woman named Linda, walked me through each transaction. The transfers began at 11:47 p.m. last night, she explained. Multiple transactions over approximately 2 hours, all authorized with the correct login credentials and security questions. 11:47 p.m. I had been asleep. Margaret had gotten up saying she couldn't sleep and was going to read downstairs. I'd found her on the couch that morning with a book in her lap, claiming she'd fallen asleep reading. She had spent 2 hours systematically draining every account we shared. "Where did the money go?" I asked Linda. "I can see the transfers went to an external account, but I can't provide details about accounts at other institutions without proper authorization. It's my money too. These are joint accounts." "I understand, sir, but the receiving account isn't with our bank. You'd need to contact them directly, or you might want to speak with legal counsel." Legal counsel. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was going to need a lawyer because of my own wife. After I hung up, I sat in that office for hours, staring at the empty accounts on the screen. I kept thinking about the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Had Margaret been acting differently? Had there been clues? The more I thought about it, the more I realized there had been signs, small things that seemed insignificant at the time. Margaret had been on her phone more than usual, often stepping out of the room to take calls. She'd started working late more frequently. There were a few nights when she claimed to be at her book club, but when I'd mentioned it to Sarah Peterson at the grocery store, she'd looked confused and said the book club hadn't met in over a month. But the biggest sign had been right in front of me for weeks. Margaret had been different in bed, distant. When I'd try to initiate intimacy, she'd find excuses or just go through the motions. I'd attributed it to stress from work, or maybe just the natural changes that come with being married for so long. Now I wondered if she'd been planning this for months. The day dragged on forever. I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to do some paperwork for my construction business, but the numbers on the invoices kept blurring together. I called my foreman, Jimmy, and told him I wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be on the job site that day. "You sure you're okay, boss?" Jimmy asked. He'd been working for me for 15 years and knew I rarely took sick days. "You sound terrible." "Just need a day," I said. "Can you handle the Peterson job without me?" "Course I can. You take care of yourself." I spent the rest of the day pacing the house, checking the accounts over and over, hoping somehow the money would reappear. It never did. Margaret came home at her usual time, 6:15 p.m. I heard her car in the driveway, heard her keys jingling as she unlocked the front door. She called out like she always did. "I'm home." I was waiting for her in the kitchen. "So," she said, setting her purse on the counter, "did you get the bank thing sorted out?" The casual way she said it made my stomach turn. Our entire life savings had vanished, and she was talking about it like it was a minor inconvenience. "Margaret, sit down. I need to start dinner. I picked up some salmon on the way home." "Forget dinner. Sit down." Something in my tone must have gotten through to her, because she finally looked at me, really looked at me. I saw her register the expression on my face. She sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd helped our kids with homework, where we'd planned our future. "I talked to the bank," I said. "The transfers were legitimate. Someone with access to our accounts moved all our money to an external account last night, between 11:47 p.m. and 1:53 a.m. Margaret's face went pale, but she maintained eye contact. "That's impossible. Nobody has access to our accounts except us." "That's right," I said slowly. "Nobody except us." We stared at each other across that table, and I watched her decide whether to keep lying or come clean. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Finally, she looked down at her hands. "Daniel, I can explain." Those 4 words changed everything. My wife, the mother of my children, the woman I'd promised to love and cherish until death do us part, had stolen our life savings. "I'm listening," I said. Margaret took a deep breath. When she looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were real or part of whatever performance she was about to give. "I've been having an affair," she said. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though part of me had suspected something was wrong, hearing her say it out loud was devastating. "How long?" I asked. 8 months. 8 months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to build up our retirement fund, while I'd been planning the trip to Europe we'd talked about taking for our 35th anniversary, my wife had been cheating on me. "Who?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." She hesitated. "Richard." From my office. Richard Kleinfeld. I'd met him at the company Christmas party. Younger than me by at least 10 years, divorced. One of those guys who thought he was still 25. He'd been overly friendly with Margaret that night, and I'd joked about it later. Margaret had laughed and said he was harmless. "So you stole our money to run away with him?" "It's not stealing, Daniel. It's my money, too." The audacity of that statement nearly made me laugh. "Your money?" "Margaret, most of that money came from my business. From jobs I worked, contracts I landed, 12-hour days in 100-degree heat. I worked, too. I contributed. You contributed about 30% of our household income. You took 100% of our savings." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I knew you'd try to hide assets if I told you I wanted a divorce. Men always do. Hide assets? Margaret, in 32 years of marriage, have I ever hidden anything from you? Have I ever lied to you about money?" She didn't answer. "Where's the money, Margaret?" "It's safe." "Where?" "I opened an account in my name only, at First National. First National Bank across town." She'd been planning this for months, setting up accounts, moving money, preparing to destroy our marriage and our financial future in one calculated strike. "I want half of it back," I said. "I can't do that." "What do you mean you can't do that?" Margaret stood up from the table. "Daniel, I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything anyway." "Your lawyer?" My voice was getting louder. "How long have you been planning this?" "A few months." "A few months. So while I've been working my ass off, thinking we were building a life together, you've been plotting to steal everything and run off with your boyfriend. It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Margaret? Explain it to me." She was crying now, but I found I didn't care. After 32 years of comforting her when she was upset, all I felt was cold anger. "I haven't been happy for a long time," she said. "You work all the time. We never talk anymore. We never do anything together." "So you decided to cheat and steal rather than talk to me about it." "I tried to talk to you. You're always too tired, too busy, too focused on work. I was working for us, for our future, so we could retire comfortably, so we could travel, so we could enjoy our golden years together. I don't want to wait for golden years that might never come. I want to be happy now." I stared at this woman I'd shared my life with, and I felt something die inside me. Not just love, I'd already realized that was gone, but hope. The hope that we could work through this, that we could save our marriage, that the woman I'd fallen in love with 34 years ago was still in there somewhere. She wasn't. This calculating stranger had replaced her completely. "I want you out of this house," I said quietly. "Daniel, be reasonable. We can work out the details through our lawyers. I want you out tonight." "This is my house too. The house that I've been paying the mortgage on for 28 years with money you just stole." Margaret gathered her purse and headed for the stairs. "I'll pack some things, but I'm not abandoning my rights to this property." She disappeared upstairs, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets. I sat at that kitchen table, staring at the salmon she'd bought for dinner, and tried to process what had just happened. My marriage was over. My savings were gone. The woman I'd trusted more than anyone in the world had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. But as I sat there in the wreckage of my life, something occurred to me. Margaret thought she'd been thorough, but she didn't know everything about my financial situation. She didn't know about the account I'd set up years ago for my business emergency fund, the account at a small credit union across town that I'd opened when I'd first started the construction company. It wasn't much, about $28,000 that I'd been saving for equipment replacement and business emergencies, but it was something. And more importantly, Margaret didn't know it existed. 20 minutes later, she came downstairs with 2 suitcases. "I'm staying at my sister's for now," she said. "My lawyer will be in touch." I didn't respond. I couldn't trust myself to speak without saying something I'd regret. She paused at the kitchen door. "Daniel, I'm sorry it had to happen this way." "No, you're not," I said. "If you were sorry, you would have talked to me before you cheated. You would have suggested counseling before you stole our money. You would have given me a chance to fix whatever was wrong with our marriage. Some things can't be fixed. We'll never know, will we? Because you decided to burn everything down instead of trying." She left without another word. I heard her car start and drive away, and then the house was silent. I sat in that silence for a long time, thinking about the past 32 years. Our wedding day, when Margaret had looked so beautiful in her white dress, promising to love me for better or worse, for richer or poorer. The day Emily was born, when Margaret had cried with joy as she held our daughter for the first time. Jake's high school graduation, when we'd sat together in the bleachers, proud parents watching our son walk across the stage. All of it felt like a lie now. Had she ever really loved me, or had I just been convenient? A stable provider while she figured out what she really wanted? The next few days were a blur of phone calls and paperwork. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Hendricks, who specialized in divorce cases. She listened to my story with the kind of calm professionalism that told me she'd heard worse. "The good news is that the money transfer was clearly done without your knowledge or consent," Patricia said during our first meeting. "The bad news is that since they were joint accounts, it's going to be complicated to prove theft." She admitted she took it. "Did you record that conversation?" "No." "Then it's your word against hers. Her lawyer will claim she was simply moving marital assets to protect them during the divorce proceedings." "Protect them from what?" "From you hiding them, according to their narrative." I felt that familiar surge of anger. I've never hidden anything from her in 32 years. "I believe you, Daniel, but we need to prove it. I'm going to need access to all your financial records, business accounts, everything. We need to show a pattern of transparency and shared financial management." That's when I told her about the credit union account. Patricia's eyebrows went up. "She doesn't know about this account?" "I don't think so. I opened it years ago for business emergencies. It was never relevant to our household finances." "How much is in it?" "About 28,000. "Don't touch it," Patricia said immediately. "Don't move it. Don't withdraw from it. Don't even check the balance online from your home computer. If she's been monitoring your online activity, we don't want her to find out about it now." The divorce papers were served 3 days later. I was on a job site, installing cabinets in a kitchen renovation, when a process server found me. The crew went quiet as I signed for the papers, and I saw the looks of sympathy on their faces. Word travels fast in the construction business, and by now everyone knew what Margaret had done to me. Reading through the divorce petition that night was like getting punched in the gut repeatedly. Margaret was asking for half of everything: the house, my business assets, retirement accounts that no longer existed thanks to her theft. She was also asking for alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed her career advancement to support my business. The most insulting part was her statement about the missing money. According to the petition, she had secured marital assets in a separate account to prevent dissipation during divorce proceedings. She made it sound like she was the responsible one, protecting our money from my reckless spending. I called Patricia that night. Can she really get alimony after stealing our savings? Unfortunately, yes. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, which means adultery doesn't automatically disqualify her from receiving support. And technically what she did wasn't theft under the law. She had legal access to those accounts. So she gets rewarded for cheating and stealing. The court will consider her conduct when making decisions about property division and support. But Daniel, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she'll get something. What about the house? That's going to depend on several factors. How much equity is in it? Your respective incomes? Your ability to buy her out? The good news is that you can prove you paid most of the mortgage payments from your business income. And the bad news? The bad news is that she lived there for 28 years and contributed to the household. The court might still award her a significant portion of the equity. I hung up feeling hopeless. Margaret was going to destroy me financially and get rewarded for it by the legal system. But as the weeks passed and the legal battle intensified, I started to realize that Margaret had made some crucial mistakes. First, she'd been overconfident about how much money she'd actually taken. She knew about our major accounts, but she didn't know everything about my business finances. More importantly, she didn't know me as well as she thought she did. I'd always been careful with money. It's something you learn growing up poor like I did. My father had worked construction too, and there were times when work was scarce and money was tight. I'd learned early that you always keep something in reserve, something hidden away for when things get really bad. The credit union account was just the beginning. Over the years, without really thinking about it, I'd developed what you might call a squirrel mentality about money. A little cash here, a small account there, nothing major, but enough to get by if everything else fell apart. It wasn't that I didn't trust Margaret. I'd just seen too many people lose everything when they trusted the wrong person or made bad investments. There was the safety deposit box at the bank downtown, where I kept some cash and important documents. Margaret knew about it, but she didn't know I'd been adding to the cash reserves every few months for years. Nothing dramatic. $50 or $100 here and there from cash jobs or when I sold used equipment. It added up to about $12,000 over the years. There was also the small account I'd opened at another credit union when I'd done some work for their building manager 5 years ago. He'd mentioned their great rates on savings accounts, and I'd opened one with $500 just to check it out. Over time, I'd added money from various cash jobs, about $8,000 total. Most importantly, there was money that Margaret didn't know existed, because she'd never paid attention to the details of my business operations. When you're a contractor, you often get paid in stages: partial payment when you start a job, progress payments as you hit milestones, final payment when you complete the work. I'd gotten into the habit of keeping progress payments in a separate business account until jobs were completely finished, then moving the money to our joint accounts. Right now I had about $35,000 in that account from 3 jobs that were nearing completion. Margaret knew about the jobs, but she didn't know about the payment schedule or the separate account. All told, I had access to about $83,000 that Margaret didn't know about. It wasn't enough to replace what she'd stolen, but it was enough to survive, to hire a good lawyer, and to start over. The key was keeping this information away from Margaret and her lawyer until the right moment. Patricia was impressed when I told her about the additional funds during our strategy meeting 6 weeks after Margaret had served me with papers. "This changes things significantly," she said, "but we need to be very careful about how we disclose this during discovery. If we reveal everything too early, her lawyer will have time to adjust their strategy." "What do you mean?" "Right now they're operating under the assumption that you're financially devastated. They're probably expecting you to settle quickly because you can't afford a protracted legal battle. If they find out you have resources, they might get more aggressive about their demands." "So what do we do?" "We let them think they're winning. We respond to their discovery requests honestly but strategically. We don't volunteer information they don't specifically ask for. And we wait for the right moment to reveal your full financial picture." "When will that be?" "Ideally during mediation or right before trial, when it's too late for them to change their entire approach." It was a risky strategy, but Patricia was confident it would work. "Your wife made a critical error," she explained. "She assumed she knew everything about your finances, so she didn't do proper due diligence before making her move. Now she's committed to a story that might not hold up under scrutiny." The waiting was the hardest part. For months I had to watch Margaret and her lawyer paint me as the villain in our divorce. According to their narrative, I was a workaholic who neglected his wife and drove her into the arms of another man. They claimed I was hiding assets and trying to cheat Margaret out of her fair share of our marital property. The worst part was that some people believed it. Margaret had always been good at playing the victim, and she had a sympathetic story. The long-suffering wife of a man who cared more about work than his family. But as the legal process dragged on, cracks started to appear in Margaret's story. The first crack came during depositions. Margaret's lawyer had demanded that I provide detailed financial records for the past 5 years, which I did. But when Patricia deposed Margaret about her knowledge of our finances, some interesting facts emerged. Margaret claimed she'd been actively involved in managing our household finances for years. But when Patricia asked her specific questions about my business expenses, tax deductions, and cash flow patterns, Margaret couldn't answer them. She didn't know how much I typically spent on materials for jobs. She didn't know which months were usually slower for construction work. She didn't even know the names of my major suppliers. So you were actively involved in managing finances, but you didn't know basic details about the source of more than 70% of your household income? Patricia asked during the deposition. Daniel handled the business side of things, Margaret admitted, but you just testified that you were involved in financial decision-making. I was involved in household budgeting and major purchases. I see. So you were involved in spending the money, but not in earning it or understanding where it came from. Margaret's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Margaret had contradicted herself, and it was all on the record. The second crack was bigger. During discovery, we found out that Margaret's affair with Richard had been going on longer than she'd initially claimed. Their email and text message records showed that they'd been involved for over a year, not 8 months like she'd told me. More damaging, they'd been planning the divorce for at least 6 months before Margaret took the money. There were emails discussing how to maximize her settlement and protect assets from Daniel's business debts. They'd even researched divorce lawyers together. This proved that Margaret's theft of our savings wasn't a desperate act by a woman afraid I'd hide assets. It was part of a calculated plan to position herself advantageously for the divorce. But the biggest crack came when we investigated where Margaret had moved our money. Patricia hired a forensic accountant, a methodical man named Robert Chen, who specialized in tracking hidden assets in divorce cases. What Robert found was fascinating. Margaret had indeed moved our money to an account at First National Bank, just like she'd told me. But that was only the first stop. Over the following weeks, she'd moved the money multiple times, to different banks, different investment accounts, even to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. She was trying to hide the money, Robert explained during a meeting in Patricia's office. This isn't the behavior of someone trying to protect marital assets. This is someone trying to conceal them. Can we get the money back? I asked. Most of it, yes, but it's going to take time and legal action in multiple jurisdictions. The good news is that all of these transfers created a paper trail that proves intent to defraud. Patricia smiled, the first time I'd seen her genuinely happy since we'd started working together. This is better than I hoped for, Daniel. Your wife just turned this from a simple divorce case into a fraud case. The final crack in Margaret's strategy came from an unexpected source, Richard himself. As the divorce proceedings heated up, and it became clear that Margaret might face serious legal consequences for her financial shenanigans, Richard started getting cold feet about their relationship. It turned out that Richard hadn't been completely honest with Margaret about his own situation. He was still legally married, just separated from his wife, and when his wife found out about his affair with Margaret, she hired her own lawyer and threatened to take him to the cleaners in their divorce. Suddenly, Richard wasn't interested in being Margaret's knight in shining armor anymore. He was facing his own financial ruin and legal troubles. Patricia found out about Richard's change of heart when his lawyer contacted her about a potential deal. Richard was willing to testify about Margaret's planning of the divorce and theft in exchange for immunity from any fraud charges related to the hidden money. He's throwing her under the bus, Patricia explained. Apparently, love doesn't conquer all when your own assets are on the line. By the time we got to mediation, Margaret's position had completely collapsed. Her lawyer knew they were facing potential criminal charges for fraud. The money trail Robert had uncovered made it impossible to claim that Margaret was just protecting marital assets, and Richard's defection meant they couldn't present a united front about the timeline or motivation for her actions. I'll never forget the look on Margaret's face when we walked into that mediation room. She looked older than her 57 years, worn down by months of legal pressure and Richard's abandonment. But more than that, she looked like someone who'd finally realized that her clever plan wasn't so clever after all. Her lawyer, an expensive-looking man named Harrison Webb, tried to maintain an aggressive posture at first. My client is willing to return half of the disputed funds in exchange for dropping all fraud allegations and proceeding with an amicable divorce, he announced. Patricia didn't even blink. Your client is going to return all of the stolen funds plus interest and penalties. She's going to waive any claim to alimony, and she's going to accept a minimal settlement for her share of the marital property. In exchange, we won't pursue criminal charges. That's completely unreasonable, Webb protested. What's unreasonable, Patricia replied, is your client stealing over $200,000 and then trying to hide it in offshore accounts. What's unreasonable is planning a divorce for 6 months while pretending to work on the marriage. What's unreasonable is committing fraud and then expecting to be rewarded for it. She slid a folder across the table. This contains copies of all the financial records Mr. Chen has uncovered, including the offshore account transactions. It also contains Richard Kleinfeld's signed statement about his discussions with your client regarding the divorce planning and asset concealment. Webb opened the folder and started reading. I watched his face change as he realized how much evidence we had against Margaret. The mediation took 3 hours. In the end, Margaret agreed to return all of the stolen money plus $22,000 in interest and penalties. She waived any claim to alimony and accepted a 25% stake in the house equity instead of the 50% she'd originally demanded. Most importantly, she agreed to a clause that would trigger criminal prosecution if she violated any terms of the settlement agreement or if we discovered any additional hidden assets. When it was over, Margaret couldn't even look at me. She signed the papers with shaking hands and left immediately with her lawyer. I sat in that conference room feeling exhausted but victorious. After 8 months of legal hell, I'd not only recovered our stolen money, but come out ahead financially. But the real victory was something else entirely. There's one more thing, Patricia said after Margaret and her lawyer had left. The accounts you didn't tell her about. The credit union account, the business reserves, the cash. You get to keep all of that. It was never part of the marital property calculation because she never knew to ask about it. I walked out of that mediation with everything Margaret had stolen, plus the $83,000 she'd never known existed. After legal fees and other expenses, I had more money than we'd started with before she emptied our accounts. But more than that, I had my self-respect back. Margaret had tried to destroy me financially and emotionally, but I'd survived. I'd fought back, and I'd won. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Margaret didn't contest the final decree. She couldn't afford to, both financially and legally. I heard through mutual friends that she and Richard had broken up shortly after the mediation. Apparently, being exposed as liars and thieves wasn't great for their relationship. I also heard that Margaret had to move in with her sister permanently because she couldn't afford her own place after paying back the stolen money and legal fees. The woman who'd thought she was going to start a glamorous new life with her younger boyfriend was now sleeping on her sister's couch at age 57. I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't. She'd made her choices. She'd decided that 32 years of marriage meant nothing compared to her selfish desires. She'd decided that our shared future was worth less than her immediate gratification. As for me, I kept the house, I kept my business, and I kept the money that Margaret never knew existed, my insurance policy that had turned into my salvation. I'm 60 years old now, and I'm starting over. It's not the retirement I'd planned with Margaret, but it's not the disaster she'd tried to create either. My kids, Emily and Jake, were shocked by their mother's behavior, but supportive of me throughout the divorce. We're closer now than we've been since they were teenagers. I've started dating again, something I never thought I'd do at my age. There's a woman named Carol who owns a flower shop downtown. She's divorced too, understands what it's like to rebuild your life after betrayal. We take things slow, but there's something there, something real and honest, unlike the lie my marriage to Margaret had become. The construction business is doing well. Word got out about how I'd handled the divorce, and I think people respect the fact that I fought back instead of just rolling over. I've had more work than I can handle, and I've been able to hire 2 more full-time guys. Most importantly, I've learned to trust my instincts again. The signs of Margaret's betrayal were there. I just chose to ignore them because I wanted to believe in our marriage. I won't make that mistake again. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about what Margaret did to me. The honest answer is no, not anymore. She thought she was so clever, planning her escape and her new life with her boyfriend. She thought she knew everything about me and our finances. But Margaret made one crucial mistake that cost her everything. She underestimated me. She thought I was just a simple construction worker who'd roll over and accept whatever scraps she decided to leave me. She was wrong. The account she missed wasn't just money. It was proof that I'd always been more careful, more prepared, and smarter than she gave me credit for. It was evidence that while she was planning to betray me, I was building security for both of us. In the end, Margaret's greed and deception destroyed her life while barely touching mine. She lost everything: her marriage, her home, her boyfriend, her financial security, and her reputation, all because she thought she could outsmart someone she'd never really understood. The hidden account she missed wasn't hidden because I didn't trust her. It was hidden because I'd learned long ago that you always keep something in reserve for when life goes wrong. Margaret going wrong was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But having that reserve, having that foundation she didn't know about, made it survivable. Today I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. And Margaret, last I heard, she was working part-time at a discount retail store, still living with her sister and struggling to make ends meet on her reduced income. The irony isn't lost on me. She threw away a comfortable life, a secure retirement, and a faithful husband for what she thought would be easy money and passionate romance. Instead, she got criminal charges, legal debt, and a boyfriend who abandoned her the moment things got difficult. But here's what I've learned from this whole nightmare. Betrayal reveals character, both in the person who betrays you and in yourself. Margaret revealed that underneath 32 years of marriage, she was selfish, calculating, and willing to destroy the person who'd loved her most. I revealed that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than she believed, and more resilient than either of us imagined. The hidden account she missed wasn't just money in a bank. It was a symbol of the life I'd built independently of her, the security I'd created through my own hard work and planning. She thought she knew everything about me, but she only knew what I'd chosen to share during our marriage. When someone tries to destroy you, they often discover that you're more prepared for survival than they realized. Margaret found out too late that the man she'd underestimated had quietly built multiple safety nets over the years, not because I expected her to betray me, but because I'd learned early in life that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. She gambled everything on a plan that required me to be helpless and naive. She lost that bet because I was neither. Now, as I look toward the future, I'm grateful for the lessons this painful experience taught me. I'm grateful for the strength I discovered I had. I'm grateful for the children who stood by me, the friends who supported me, and the lawyer who fought for me. Most of all, I'm grateful for that hidden account, not just because it saved me financially, but because it represented something Margaret could never take away from me: my independence, my foresight, and my ability to survive whatever life throws at me. She tried to leave me with nothing. Instead, she left me with everything that really matters: my integrity, my business, my family relationships, and the knowledge that I can handle whatever comes next. The woman who thought she was so clever in planning my downfall never realized that I'd been quietly planning for survival my entire adult life. That hidden account was just the beginning. The real insurance policy was the man I'd become over 60 years of facing challenges and overcoming them. Margaret wiped our accounts, but she couldn't wipe out who I am. And who I am turned out to be someone much stronger than she ever imagined. Today I wake up every morning in my own house, run my own business, and live my life on my own terms. I sleep well at night, knowing that every dollar I have was earned honestly and belongs to me completely. Margaret, on the other hand, wakes up every morning knowing that she destroyed a good marriage, lost a comfortable life, and ended up with nothing to show for her betrayal except legal bills and regret. In the end, the account she missed saved more than just my finances. It saved my faith in myself and my ability to rebuild from disaster, and that's worth more than all the money she stole and had to give back. The hidden account was never really hidden from Margaret because I didn't trust her. It was hidden because I understood something she never learned. In life, you need to be prepared to stand on your own, no matter who you think you can depend on. When Margaret chose betrayal over honesty, theft over communication, and greed over love, she discovered that the man she'd married was far more prepared for that betrayal than she'd ever imagined. She missed one account, but more importantly, she missed understanding the kind of man she was trying to destroy. That misunderstanding cost her everything and gave me back my life, and for that, I'll always be grateful.